Welcome into episode 5 of the Packers Playbook series. Today, we're going to be looking at the route trees of the receivers and the running backs. Obviously, there is a lot you can see on the right side. We've got about 29 pages of receiver routes. It is organized in alphabetical order, easy for the receivers to find. When they see it on a diagram, they can easily search and find it in alphabetical order. But then we also have just about 4 pages of running back routes. I'm not going to go over all of the routes. I will focus on some of the routes, but I will kind of go slow in some of these pages if you guys want to stop and read any of these routes. Now, the one thing that is really interesting about these playbooks, this is the West Coast system, the Shanahan type system. So it's not a number system in terms of the routes. And instead, each route is going to be individual, right? Because they want precise details on what the receivers are going to be doing in each situation. So you're going to notice on some of these, like an arrow, right? You've got an arrow for both an inside basic route and an outside basic route. And you can see how they differ a little bit, right? If you're inside, you're just going to take that vertical stem. You're pushing vertical to 4 to 6 yards. You're going to sit down, turn over your inside shoulder, so you're showing like it's a hitch, and then you're going to slide out. All right, so you either sit down and show your QB your numbers, or if it's a man, you're going to break out and separate once you give the quarterback your eyes. All right, but if we look on the outside, you can see there's a slight angle on the inside because you're trying to push to that same landmark, right? If you had an inside alignment, right, if you flip this guy, and he's here, that would just be a straight vertical stem. So that's going to be a lot of precision in each of these, and you can see the description, the adjustments versus different coverages, and that's what we'll look at with some of these. So first route I want to focus on is the basic, because this is a staple in this offense. You have pushing vertical 12 to 14 yards. If you're lined up a little bit outside, you can take this slant stem, the slant burst on the inside, right? And then get up to 12 to 14 yards before breaking in. This is all those in breakers, right? If it's a precise cut like this, it's going to be a basic. Whereas we could look a little bit later, there's going to be a different route that is going to be more rounded, where you're wrapping around the back of a defender. So the basic, pushing vertical 12 to 14 yards, breaking inside and staying on the move. You're not just going to sit down. Notice there's no adjustment, right? There's no dotted line. If there's a different coverage, if you have a basic, you're running the basic. That's pretty much it. Now we'll move on a little bit here. And we can see we've got different routes for different purposes. The attack we see quite often on third and very long, or if we're playing, Tampa 2, you're just going to get to the middle of the field. You're going to attack the Mike linebacker. Usually in Tampa 2, you're going to try to get him to attach, right? If you're the third receiver, that Mike is going to be the middle read defender. So you're attacking him, and then you're just going to kind of sit down and break out, because you want that Mike, right, to attach to you and follow you, which means you probably have something going over the top, right, towards the middle of the field. So the attack route is quite useful. And then we've got the blaze out in the bench, which we've seen quite often in third and long situations, right? In 2-minute drill, because you have an outbreaker. All these routes, the ball is on the inside. So blaze out, you're going out at 22 to 25 yards. This is the NFL. You got these big routes, 15 to 20 yards. We've got 21 yards on the bench, but you can see the idea is, hey, if you're a little bit further outside, if you're +2 on the numbers, you're going to inside stem, get up, and then bend it out. And if you've got a guy on the top of you, right, if he's on your top hip, bend it back down and be quarterback friendly. So the bench is something that we've used quite often recently. It's just an outbreaking route, pushing vertical. Christian Watson does a very good job of this, because he can get that speed, that threat of going vertical, and then he's just going to break off and get a nice timing completion there. Next page, we've got the choice routes, which is pretty common in most offenses, right? You're just going to have this choice. You can either sit, You can break in or you can break out. And this was a route that was used quite often with Davante Adams when he was in the Packers offense. It is still used now by the Rams, and they are super successful with that in the red zone. They basically line up in 13 personnel, right? They got 3 tight ends, and then they put Davante Adams isolated on one side, and then he has his choice. Either, oh, I'm going to run a slant, I'm going to run a fade, right? And he's going to win that because his release is so good. But there you've got the choice. You've got your corner routes, come back. Those are traditional routes. We've got the curl through. And the reason why it's called the curl through is that's one of the concepts where you're going to have this kind of widened curl or a curl on the outside. And then you've got this through, which is essentially a post where you're trying to get the safety's attention. If it's MFC, middle of the field closed, you're trying to cross the face of that safety to get his attention. Right? If it's middle of the field open, 2 high safeties, you're going to take that into more of like a skinny post to split those 2 safeties. Now on this page, you're going to get a few that don't really align with basic terminology. You've got a dig, which a lot of the times people are going to say, hey, a dig, you're going in and you're breaking across the field. That's a dig. Right? High school football, that's usually what it is. In the Packers offense, it is not that. It is instead an 18-yard comeback, right? So you need to work back to the quarterback. You're essentially pushing 18 yards and you're breaking back down, and you're going to keep coming down that stem if that ball doesn't get thrown, right? You're just trying to push past the sticks essentially for those long kind of third down situations. You also have a drag, which is here. And here in the Packers offense, a drag is not actually, going across the formation. That's going to be a shallow cross, right? You can see deep shallow here in the red zone. We'll talk a little bit more about the shallow crosses, but a drag is a flat route to win versus man. And you can see the adjustment. Hey, if it's zone, just run a flat, right? A drag works exactly like a flat. You're just climbing to 6 yards. Whereas a drag versus man, you're going to stair step a little bit. You're going to push vertical, and then you're going to break to the outside, right? So if you got press or man, you got to attack the leverage of that defensive back before you break it out into the flat. And then here, I was talking about one of those other routes, a Dover, right? You can see how you get to the numbers and you bend back in, right? It's not as sharp, but it is still one of those in-breaking routes where you're selling this go. You're trying to sell vertical, but before you do that, you're going to take a speed cut and you're going to roll essentially to 20 yards. You're going to start your break at about 15, and then you roll into 20. So a lot of these routes are very precise, trying to get the timing down with the quarterback. Only one route with an E, the eliminator, right? And it's essentially just a shallow cross with an option to sit down versus zone. All right, so you can see you take this little juke cross. If it's man, you just keep running. If it's zone, you're just going to sit here and stop. So all these receivers have to know exactly what they're meant to do for each of these. Fade is pretty simple, right? You're just win the hip, hold the red line, eyes at 8 yards, react to the back shoulder, right? So you're going to sell. I'm going to sell vertical at about the 8-yard mark. My eyes are going back to the QB. And we got a flag route, which is another rolling at 10 yards up to 6, kind of like a sail route, which we'll see a little bit later on. And we've got the glance, which is used on RPOs a lot of the time, right? So run pass option. If we've got a 1-on-1, we've scored on this earlier this season with Romeo Doubs. He's just running a glance route, right? He's breaking at that flat angle on the goal line, making sure that he gets that ball, but he's just pushing for 5 steps, either taking a high angle if it's, cover 0 and there's no one back deep, or if it's man and the guy's playing kind of a catch technique, he's going to take that a little bit flatter, be friendly to the quarterback. And we got a high cross, which we've seen lately being used, right? Getting across the field. Jaden Reed did this. You can see the stair step versus man, right? So you're going to bend it, get vertical with your shoulders, and then break across. And a high cross, you're looking for 18 to 22 yards. There is also a low cross, which would be a lot less. All right. Then we have the hitch. Pretty traditional, but you can see, again, you've got a dotted line. Hey, if we've got a certain coverage, a tough coverage, we're going to convert that to a fade. A tough is if this receiver is on the back side, you've got a 3x1, right? So you've got a 3x1, a tough coverage. You're going to have a corner that's about 5 to 6 yards off the ball, but he's responsible for the deep half. And then you got a free safety down here who's going to come down and play the zone. So they flip the responsibility. But if you get a tough, you're just going to try to basically take both of these players out. All right. The free safety, if he's going to shoot down, he can't really sit on that hitch. He's not going to make a play. And then you're also forcing this corner to attach to that fade. So you're essentially taking two players out of a play by making that correct adjustment on the tough coverage. And we'll keep moving on. You can see the low cross, as I mentioned. You know, this is 10 to 12 rather than 22 yards. So low cross generally on a tight end. And then you've also got the +2, which is what Jaden Reed was using. But of course, we love the crosses against man coverage. And we got a few other, and we're going to look at how there's these routes with a complement to it. All right, so we've got a now, which is a one-step slant. Christian Watson scored on a touchdown against the Bears. I had a blank for a second. Just a one-step slant, go on the move, right? Always on the move. Then you've got the counter to that. You've got now return. Hey, I'm going to sell that. I'm going to stick my foot in, and I'm going to get out. Normally, we're going to call that kind of a whip route, but in the Packers offense, that is a now return. And you've got the Omaha, which is going to be your stem outside, 4 to 6 yards, quick out, and that we use quite often from a condensed formation. If they're condensed, it's going to be a wide in Omaha. You're going to spray release to the outside and then kind of roll to the outside. And then if it's just straight up, you got no one pressing you in front, you're just going to take that 4 steps vertical and then break out. But you can see versus Cloud, we want to fade. Cloud, you're going to have a corner at 5 yards. He's playing cover 2. So if he's playing cover 2 and you're taking this route into the flat, you're just going to be, done, because he's just going to attach and there's no way you're getting that ball. So instead of, forcing or just sitting where he's going to cover, roll that into a fade and force him to get some depth, because that might clear something out underneath. Or it might get you open for a hole shot if they're playing just strictly cover 2. And then you've got the China and the pump, 2 variations, just like the return. You can see the China, we're changing direction. So it's going to be a quick out, plant for 4 steps, right? And then you're going to spin back to the inside. And then you got the pump. It's basically an out and up. Pretty simple. And we'll just quickly go through the rest of these. I'll slowly stay on the screen. That way, if you want to pause and read a lot of the coaching points, you're more than welcome. But you've got your traditional post. You've got your widen post. All right. You've got a bunch of different routes for specific situations. It's just you need to be aware of a lot of these routes if it pops up on one of the diagrams, because usually the plays, once we get into those, you'll see that the receivers are labeled of what route they're meant to be doing. And we'll keep moving. We got a sail. We've got a seam. Very simple. And then you've got scab, scout, scooter. Your shallow cross, usually used on a mesh, right? We saw low shallow cross and high shallow cross. Those are strictly labeled just for the mesh. You've got your sluggo under. You got your slant and sluggo, your traditional, your snag, right? So we got a lot of traditional routes here that are still, used today. Your slant used to be a staple of the Packers offense, not used as much, but, and we'll just keep moving on because there is a lot. I've talked a lot about the most important routes, most routes that we see often. And then, of course, you've got your stick. We see this quite often, right? It's a breakout, and you're going to get eyes back to the quarterback over your outside shoulder rather than your inside. And then you've got your stick nod and your stick china that are plays off of that. So stick china, changing direction again, coming back to the inside. Stick nod, you're going to float outside and then break back up the field. Generally going to be a man beater if you've shown that stick multiple times in a game. Keep working. We got strike, another one of those kind of 10 yards and you're rolling. So it's only a 6-step. So this is just going to be attacking that middle of the field. And then we'll just keep rolling through. And we got Thunder, which is an interesting one as well. You can see all the adjustments for Thunder. Right, you've got verse free access or bail, verse cloud, verse press man. Right, so you're basically going to sell on Thunder. You're going to sell the fade for press, but you're going to stop at 8 yards. All right, if you get cloud, we talked about it earlier, just send it fade. If you got free access, hey, we're just going to stop here at the sticks. Right, 3 big steps, 2 little, snap down, and then you're coming back to the ball because it's essentially just a hitch at that point. We're just going to keep moving on. Not going to stop on any of these, just stopping for you guys in case you want to look at it. And then we'll look at the running back routes, only a few pages. The one that's used most frequently in the Packers offense is this check through. All right, they're just going to see if there's anyone there. If there's not, we're just going to be that outlet at 3 to 5 yards. All right, if it's a quick game 3-step, we're just going to get to 3 yards. If it's a 5 or a 7-step drop, hey, we're going to get to 5 yards on that. You can see check flat. Anytime it says check, it means you're in pass protection first before you're going out on that route. Just slowly going through. And then that shall be the end. We've got screen, which obviously we'll eventually talk about some of their screens, but you can see on the right, 2019 training camp, some of the plays that are going to be installed for number 1. And you can see just the runs on install number 1. This is everything that they've got. All right, you've got outside zone, so 18-19-0. You've got 19-18 weak, 18-19 Mike, right? Wanda. So you've got a bunch of outside zones. And then you've got your inside zones, right? Weak insert, weak XZ ghost. That's where you're going to have your X or your Z ghosting around the back to get a play action after you've handed it off. And then you've got some of the specials. So gives you an idea of, for the first install, what the players have to know. And you can see it talks about the formations, the adjustments, and everything else that they're trying to run these plays out of. So that's a little preview of what we're going to see next, looking at some of the installs eventually in the run game. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.